I'd disappeared for 8 years and everyone was looking for me. Here's why. It all started on a Saturday. A regular kind of Saturday, when you wake up, stretch, and go make some coffee because that's just how life works. But if someone had told me back then that it would be my last normal Saturday for years to come, I would have laughed. Anyway, I just left. Vanished. No farewell notes, no traces. People searched for me. Friends, family, the police, even some weird internet folks who clearly had too much free time. The whole town was in an uproar. My face was printed in newspapers, and even my old school teacher, Mrs. Wilson, whom I couldn't stand, posted a video online saying, "Brian was always a bit odd, but he wasn't a bad guy." Thanks, Mrs. Wilson, that really helped. But here's the truth. I didn't run away. I wasn't kidnapped, and it wasn't even my decision. It all started with a letter I was never supposed to receive. I remember standing at the mailbox, holding it in my hands. There was no return address on the envelope, just my name, written in shaky handwriting. Inside was a single word. Remember. That's when everything went to hell. I stood there holding the letter, feeling a chill run down my spine. Remember. Great. Remember what? I turned the envelope over, held it up to the light. Nothing. It didn't feel like a joke. It felt too personal, though I didn't understand why at the time. I walked back inside, tossed the letter on the table, and went to pour myself some coffee, but my hands were shaking so much I nearly dropped the mug. What the hell? I felt something stirring inside me, a vague unease, like someone had reminded me of something I'd spent years trying to forget. An hour later, I was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the letter, while my cat, Oscar, casually tried to climb into my lap. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was something important, something wrong. Suddenly, a thought came to me. What if it was someone from my past? From that part of my life I rarely talked about. I wasn't exactly a model kid in high school. Friends, sure, I had them. But not all of them were good people. One of them was Adam Carter. The last time I saw him, he said, "If I ever disappear, don't come looking for me." It's not your fight. And there it was, creeping back into my mind like a ghost. The déjà vu was so strong, I could almost hear Adam's voice in my head. I grabbed my phone and dialed his number. I didn't know why. The ringing echoed in my mind, and after a few seconds, I heard the voicemail message. "This number is no longer in service." That's when I realized I was in deep. I put the phone down and wiped my sweaty palms on my jeans. The anxiety was becoming almost physical. You know those moments when you can tell something is wrong, but you just can't figure out what. This was one of those moments. I opened my laptop and started searching for Adam Carter on social media. Nothing. Not a single mention. It was like he'd never existed. Even old photos where he should have been now showed strange gaps. Faces were cropped, and he wasn't in any of them. That's impossible, right? The internet doesn't forget. Except when it comes to Adam Carter, apparently. I started digging deeper. School archives, forums we used to hang out on as teenagers. The same story everywhere. Adam had simply vanished, erased from reality. And then I remembered. About 10 years ago, in our last year of high school, Adam and I got into something I'd been trying to forget. Something that kept me up at night. We used to explore abandoned places, teenage thrill-seeking and all that. One day we found an old motel on the outskirts of town. The doors were unlocked, and inside it was strange, dusty, but it felt like someone had just left. There was a guest logbook on the front desk, and among dozens of blank pages there was one single entry. Name, Brian and Adam. We know you're here. I swear. At the time I thought it was some kind of dumb prank. We bolted out of there so fast we nearly broke our legs. Adam said something then. "Some doors are better left unopened, man." But it was too late. And now, 8 years later, someone was reminding me of the thing I'd tried so hard to forget. I grabbed the letter off the table and examined it again. In the corner of the paper there was a faint watermark, a small emblem of a circle with an arrow, like a compass. I'd seen that symbol somewhere before, but I couldn't remember where, and then there was a knock at the door, slow, deliberate. I froze. I sat there, unable to move, paralyzed. The knock came again, 3 even strikes, no more, no less. The kind of knock that makes it clear the person on the other side knows you're home, knows you're scared. Oscar, my cat, hissed and bolted under the couch. He'd never done that before. It was a bad sign. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. No one. Nothing. But I could hear footsteps. Light, almost inaudible, like someone was standing just out of view. I didn't open the door. Instead, I picked up my phone and tried once more to find any trace of Adam. Nothing. But another name popped into my mind. Lucy Devereaux. She used to hang out with us, kind of like our moral compass. If anyone knew what happened that night at the motel, it would be her. I found her on social media. Her profile hadn't been updated in years, but it was still active. I typed out a message with trembling hands. Lucy, I need to talk to you. It's important. It's about Adam. Before I could even hit send, a message popped up from her. Did you get a letter too? My heart sank. I quickly typed, yes. And within seconds, she replied, Brian, listen carefully. If you're home, leave. Now they're already close. I barely had time to read her message when another knock came at the door. This time, louder. And there was something rustling under the door. Without thinking, I grabbed a backpack and stuffed my phone, wallet, the letter, everything I thought might be useful, into it. I was reaching for the door handle when something inside me whispered, They're waiting for you to come out. I ran to the window, cracked the curtain slightly, and looked outside. A black SUV was parked across the street, its engine running. Someone was inside, and I could swear they were looking right at me. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Lucy. The window. Black SUV. They're watching. You need to be smarter. She knew. How? I clenched the phone in my hand, closed my eyes for a moment, and did the only thing I could, slipped out the back door, and ran while they didn't know I was gone. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing. I wasn't coming back home. I slipped out the back door as quietly as I could. The cold evening air burned my lungs, but I couldn't afford to slow down. I took a few steps down the dark alley and glanced back. The house looked just as it always had, but I knew it was no longer safe. The SUV was still there, but now I saw the driver casually step out and head toward my house. Tall, dressed in a black coat, moving with the kind of confidence that screamed, I know what I'm doing. I hunched my shoulders and walked faster, trying to stay silent. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Lucy. Did you get out? Don't go back home. They're always watching. They? That's what kept gnawing at me. Who were they? The police? The FBI, or something worse? I ducked behind a row of trash bins at the end of the alley and dialed Lucy. The line rang, once, twice, and finally her voice. Brian? Yeah. Lucy, what the hell is going on? Who are they? She was silent for a moment before whispering, You don't think it's just a letter, do you? It's a warning. They've found us. Wait. Are you saying this is about that night? The motel? Listen to me carefully. Her voice was shaking. Everything that happened there, it never went away. It's been watching us. And now, it's coming back. What's coming back? Before she could answer, I heard a muffled noise on her end, like someone forcing a door open. Then her hushed voice, Brian, I have to go. Run. The line went dead. I pressed my back against the cold brick wall, feeling an icy dread settle in my chest. If Lucy was right, I was only beginning to understand the mess I'd gotten myself into. I knew I needed answers. But first, I had to get out of the city. I called for a taxi, gave them a fake name and an address a few blocks away, a decoy in case someone was tracking me. As I turned a corner, I spotted the black SUV slowly cruising down the street, its headlights lazily sweeping over the shuttered storefronts. The feeling of being hunted was unbearable. It was time to disappear. Again. The taxi pulled up to the intersection, and I immediately sensed something was off. The driver stared at me just a little too long, a little too intently. He was an older man with tired eyes, but there was something in his gaze that made my skin crawl. I slid into the back seat, avoiding eye contact. "Where to?" he asked with a slight southern drawl. "Cloister Road 55, I said, giving him a random address nowhere near where I was actually headed. He nodded and pulled away, but I noticed his eyes lingered on me in the rearview mirror longer than I liked. I pretended to be absorbed in my phone, but I kept glancing out the window. The SUV was nowhere in sight, and for a moment I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. But my gut told me otherwise. "Been in the city long?" the driver asked. "Number just passing through," I muttered, still avoiding his gaze. "Yeah, lots of people coming and going these days. Or leaving," he added cryptically. A chill ran down my spine. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Lucy. I quickly unlocked the screen and read the message. "Are you in a taxi? The driver's with them. Get out at the next stoplight and run." Damn. Damn! I glanced around and saw we were approaching a traffic light. Red. My chance. "Hey, you know what? Let's stop here. I think I got the address wrong," I said, trying to sound casual. The driver looked at me through the mirror and slowly smiled. "No, Brian. You shouldn't get out." My stomach dropped. He knew my name. I hadn't told him my name. Without thinking, I grabbed the door handle, but he flicked the central lock. "You're not going anywhere, friend. We need to talk." What happened next was pure instinct. I lunged forward and struck him in the back of the head with my fist, not even thinking about what I was doing. He shouted, the car swerved, and I kicked at the door lock with all my strength. It gave way and I tumbled out onto the street, running before he could react. I heard him yelling something behind me, but I didn't look back. My phone buzzed again. Lucy. "You still alive?" she wrote. "Yeah. But now they know I'm here." I didn't know how much time I had, but one thing was clear. They were closer than I thought. I had to figure out what they wanted before it was too late. I ran without direction, the city blurring around me in streaks of neon lights, wet streets, and indifferent passers-by who didn't even bother to look. Fear and adrenaline propelled me forward. Somewhere behind me, I heard the screech of tires. The taxi. It had stopped, but the driver hadn't gotten out. They always worked from the shadows. My phone buzzed again. Lucy. "Brian, listen. I found something about that motel. You need to come to me. Now." If anyone could help, it was Lucy. I called her number, but she didn't pick up. Instead, another message came through. "Don't call. They're listening. Just come. And don't let them see you." I ducked into a side alley, exhaled, and tried to collect my thoughts. First, I had to make sure I wasn't being followed. I ducked into a 24-hour convenience store, bought a bottle of water, and glanced around. All clear, but the old man at the register watched me a little too closely, like he was trying to figure out who I was. I left quickly and headed toward Lucy's apartment, each step reverberating in my chest like a dull drumbeat of fear. When I finally reached her building, something felt wrong. The lights in her windows were off, but the front door was slightly ajar. I didn't like it one bit, but I had no choice. I stepped inside. Her apartment smelled strange, damp, dusty, with an unidentifiable undertone that made my stomach churn. Papers were scattered on the table, photos, notes, and that same symbol, a compass in a circle. It was everywhere, on the printouts, on the wall, even drawn on the bathroom mirror. "Lucy?" I called out softly. No response. I moved closer to the table and saw among the papers a photo of the motel. That motel. But there was something else. A figure standing in one of the windows. Dark, indistinct, but I felt its gaze locked onto me. And that's when I heard the sound. Someone was in the other room. I crept toward the bedroom, my heart pounding in my ears. When I pushed the door open, I saw her. Lucy. She was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, staring at me with wide, unblinking eyes. "Brian," she whispered, "you shouldn't have come." Before I could say anything, something behind me slammed the front door shut. The door slammed with a deafening echo and my mouth went dry. I turned slowly, expecting to see someone, anyone, behind me, a person, a shadow, or something worse. But there was nothing, just emptiness. I turned back to Lucy. She was still on the floor, her eyes fixed on me like I was a ghost she hadn't expected to see. "Lucy, what the hell is going on?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but it wavered. She nodded toward the papers scattered around her. "They've been watching us since that night, Brian. But we didn't understand what we stumbled onto back then. It was more than just an abandoned motel." I glanced at the papers, diagrams, photos, forum printouts with headlines like "Shadows in the Window," "Room 6 Disappeared," and "Do you hear that sound?" It all looked like evidence in a case none of us ever wanted to be part of. "Adam," I breathed, scanning the photos. "Where is he? What happened to him?" Lucy looked up at me. "Adam didn't disappear, Brian. He never left the motel." What? A cold chill ran down my spine. "We thought we escaped that night. But Adam, he stayed behind. Maybe not by choice." I shook my head, struggling to process what she was saying. "No, wait. I saw him. After that night. We hung out, drank, or—" "You think you saw him?" Lucy interrupted, her voice sharp and icy. "But what if they just made us think that?" A sinking feeling settled in my gut. It was impossible. Lucy couldn't be right. But suddenly, my memories of those times with Adam seemed blurry, like a poorly digitized old video. "Do you understand what they're doing?" Lucy stood abruptly, her voice trembling with urgency. "They're playing with reality, Brian. They're erasing it, rewriting it, twisting it however they want. They made us forget. They made you forget." I stepped back, feeling the room spin. "Why? Why us? Why are they doing this?" Lucy took a deep breath, running a hand through her hair like she was fighting off some inner demon. "Because we went into room 6. And at that moment, every light in the apartment flickered and went out. The power was gone. My phone screen flashed once before dying completely. And in the darkness, I heard it. That sound. The one I had spent years trying to forget. A quiet, deep, almost vibrating whisper that crawled under my skin. "You must come back." The darkness in Lucy's apartment was absolute. Not a single glimmer of light. Just silence and that oppressive feeling I was starting to recognize all too well. "You must come back." The whisper wasn't just a sound. It was everywhere. Hanging in the air, rattling in my mind, and deep in my bones. It vibrated inside me, like someone was rewinding an old, worn-out tape over and over again. I felt Lucy grab my hand, her fingers icy cold. "Brian, we have to leave. Right now." Her voice trembled, but she held it together. I nodded, though I knew she couldn't see me. I pulled her toward the door, but then I heard the click of a lock. The door was sealed shut. "Damn it!" I yanked harder at the handle, but it didn't budge. Then another sound echoed in the dark. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, as if someone was moving through the apartment without any rush. They were coming from the bedroom. "Who's there?" I whispered, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. No answer. I groped my way to the table and grabbed something solid, a mug from the feel of it. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. Lucy clung to my sleeve, her breathing heavy and uneven. The footsteps grew closer. "Lucy, where's the exit?" She didn't answer. In the darkness, I could hear her labored breathing, and then a barely audible whisper, "They're here." And that's when I saw them. Dark, blurry silhouettes in the corner of the room. They didn't move like people. They trembled and flickered like figures from an old TV tuned to a dead channel. I clapped a hand over my mouth, stifling a scream. They stood there, watching. We couldn't see their faces, but we could feel their stares. I knew only one thing. We had to leave. Right now. I grabbed Lucy's hand and pulled her toward the window. We bolted so quickly that the table overturned, scattering papers and photos all over the floor. The shadows surged after us. I didn't think. I drove my elbow into the window. Once, twice, a third time. The glass cracked, and cold night air rushed into the room. "Go! Jump!" I shouted at Lucy, and without hesitation she climbed through. When I tried to follow her, I felt something wrap around my ankle. Cold, dead. I fell, slamming onto the floor. Lucy screamed, "Brian!" I shouted back and thrashed wildly, feeling the invisible grip pull me back into the darkness. But I broke free. I scrambled through the window and tumbled down, landing hard on the roof of a parked car. Lucy was already on her feet. "Run!" We ran. I don't know how long we kept running, but when I glanced back, I saw the window to her apartment. It was empty. But I knew this wasn't over. We would have to go back to the motel. Lucy and I stood in the dark room of the motel, each step bringing us closer to the truth I had spent so long trying to forget. But something was off. Something felt too implausible. The motel. Adam. The shadows. It all began to stir strange, terrifying memories I had fought so hard to suppress. "You came back," Adam said. His voice was hoarse, barely human. His eyes were open, but they were lifeless. He didn't move, just lay there on the bed, staring at me as if he'd been waiting for me all this time. But how could I return when he had always been here? My pulse quickened, and a relentless cascade of whispers filled my ears, as if the entire room was shrinking, suffocating me with thoughts that were too loud. "What happened to you, Adam?" I managed to breathe out, feeling the weight in my chest. He didn't respond. But in that moment, I realized this wasn't Adam. It was just a fragment of something I had seen in my mind. Panic took hold of me. I staggered back, closing my eyes, trying to block out the distorted, absurd vision. And then it hit me. This wasn't the first time. All these years, I had been seeing illusions. Lucy grabbed my hand. "Brian, you don't understand. This is all in your mind. You know what's been happening. We were in the psychiatric hospital when you disappeared. Those 8 years you were gone. It wasn't real." My eyes widened. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The room around me began to shudder, dissolve, and everything I thought was real crumbled like a house of cards. "You said I had to come back. Why?" I clutched my head, trying to piece together anything from my fractured memories. Lucy looked at me with pain and regret in her eyes. "You thought you escaped. But the truth is, you've been here the entire time." "No!" I screamed, clutching my head as if I could crush my thoughts to keep them from spilling out. "This can't be! This isn't possible!" Everything around me started to blur. The motel window faded and I saw myself, sitting in a cage, locked in a psychiatric ward, under watchful eyes. "You never left, Brian. You've been here all this time, and these 8 years, they were just your mind playing tricks on you." And then I understood. I understood that everything that had happened was a twisted game inside my own head. The shadows, the motel, Lucy, Adam, they were all creations of my thoughts, my fears. My hallucinations had been so vivid that I never realized they were just the symptoms of my broken mind. And at that moment, with horror and despair, I realized I was trapped in my own mind.